So many of you made some mistakes on the back part of the quiz over questions like this. Give me the domain and range. I decided to do a little video to kind of maybe help with that situation. So this is a graphic organizer that I made. You should copy this down. There is going to be a place for it on Canvas for you to upload what you copy down. So be sure you get it copied down. There's nothing special about this graphic organizer. If you want to rearrange it and put it in a different format, I'm fine with that. I need the graphic organizer to be something that is helpful to you. This is domain and range. There's two kinds of domain and range problems, the kind where you have arrows and the kind where you don't have arrows. If you're not understanding what I mean by this, this is an example right here of a domain and range where there are arrows. This one right here, no arrows. Arrows right here. Arrows right here. No arrows on this one. Arrows right here. No arrows. No arrows. I'm talking about on the ends. I have an arrow right here and one without an arrow. That's going to go in the arrow pile. Again, if you see an arrow, doesn't matter if it's just one, it goes into the arrow category. I have arrows right here, arrows, arrows, arrows. So two kinds of domain and range questions, those with arrows, those without. The ones without arrows should be the easiest ones for you to do. The answers are always going to look like this. It's always going to be for domain, X is going to be in the middle. For range, Y is going to be in the middle. You always use less than symbols. Of course, when it's appropriate to put a bar underneath it, but still it's always less than, not greater than. Never ever will you have greater than on a no arrow domain and range question, because you're going to have a starting place and a stopping place. You're going to have a starting place with range. You're going to have a stopping place for the range. So a starting place and a stopping place. The starting place is always going to be for domain. It's always going to be on the left. The stopping place will always be the number on the right. For range, the starting place is always the number on the bottom. And for the top, it will always, the stopping place will always be the number on the top. So remember, for domain, you read left to right. For the range, you read bottom up. I gave you a note card. So for a note card, let me see if I can do a makeshift note card here. Okay, so my makeshift note card here, you put the note card on top of your graph and you start dragging it to answer the question about domain. You drag it from left to right. So as I drag this from left to right, the first time I see my graph right here, I am going to start my highlights or my colors. Let's see if I'll do red here. I can put, this is a solid line, so I'm going to put a solid dot. And then everywhere that I can see my graph, whether it's below the x-axis or above the x-axis, that graph is using part of the x-axis. So I've started my domain right here, and I still am using the x-axis. I'm still using the x-axis. I'm still using the x-axis. Oh, there's where I stop using the x-axis right there. So I have another dot right here, and I shade in between. Okay, now that's just a number line, and you write what we have shaded, and we did a whole series of those. We put the X in the middle. You put a less than symbol. You always start off with the less than symbol. And then I look and see where I am. 1, 2, 3. That looks like I started at -3. And it looks like I stopped at +3. Now to determine whether or not I put a bar underneath these. That is a solid graph that's crossing the x-axis right there. Since it's a solid circle, in other words, it's not a dashed. Since it's solid, I am going to put a bar underneath. That means I should include the -3 and I should include the +3 in my domain, because there is a dot at 3 and there is a dot at -3. Same thing is going to happen for my range. For my range, I'm just going to move my note card from the bottom up. Okay, so as I move it from the bottom up, that's the first time I see it. So that's where my range starts. And then I'm going to mark that y-axis right there, and then I'm going to mark it right there where it stops, and then I'm going to shade everything in between. So I'm going to mark where it started right there the first time I saw it, and the last time that it uses the y-axis, it happened right there. And then I'm going to shade in between. And what are those numbers? 1, 2, 3, -3, 1, 2, 3, and +3. So my range ended up being exactly the same as my domain, except I'm going to put a y, I'm going to put a less than and a less than, I'm going to put the -3 because that's the bottom number, I'm going to put a +3 because that's the top number. Do I put a bar underneath it? Yes, I do. I put a bar underneath it because, again, there is a dot at that y-axis. So that's what I am referring to over here when I say left number, right number, bottom number, top number. I didn't write the word bottom and top, but anyway, that's what that means. And the same thing happens when we have a figure like this. Let me go back and grab my, grab my rectangle. Oh my goodness, this is harder than you think. Grab my rectangle. Okay, so for domain, I'm going to move it left to right. The number that I see on the left, the first, there it is right there. So I'm going to put a dot on the x-axis right there. I'm going to put a dot on the x-axis right there. A dot on the x-axis right there. And then I'm going to continue to move it. Oh, it's on the box. I'm going to continue to move it, and then I'm going to put a dot at the last place I see one. Right there's the last place. If I move any further, you see that it stopped. But what kind of dot is going to go right there on the x-axis? Right here, it's going to be an open dot. So a closed dot over here, an open dot over there. So closed dot over here, open dot over here. Why? Because that dot is open, so it's not going to be included, and I'm going to shade everything in between. 1, 2, so that's -2. It's going to start at -2. Start at -2. It's going to stop at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to stop at 5. Do I put a bar underneath it? Not on this one because it's an open dot, but yes on this one because it's closed. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the range, except I'm going to read it from the bottom up. From the bottom, the first thing I see is that dot right there, and since that's the first dot I see, and it's an open dot over here on the y-axis, I'm going to put a dot in the same place, and it's going to be an open dot. Then I'm going to continue to drag my my note card up until I reach the top point. There's the top point right there. It looks like the top point happens at 1. So again, it's a solid graph right there. So I'm going to put a solid dot right there, and I'm going to shade everything in between. So y less than, and then the lowest dot is 1, 2, -2, and the top dot is 1. The lowest dot does not get a bar, but the top dot does because it's solid. Okay. And again, can do the same thing right here. I'll do this one really quickly. That's a closed dot. That's a closed dot, and everything in between. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's -4 less than x less than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the bottom dot is down here. So 1, 2, 3, that looks like it started at -3, and that dot is filled. So that dot is filled. That's the highest dot. So I'm going to shade everything in between. -3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -3 less than y less than 5. Does anything have a bar underneath it? This one, yes, has a bar. This one, yes, has a bar because the dots were solid. This one down here where the -3 is, yes, it gets a bar. This one up here, yes, it gets a bar. Again, because all the dots were filled. All right, I'm going to put the ones with arrows in another video.